It is time, everybody, to talk Dynasty and College Football 26. The trailer dropped today. There were some good things in there I'm excited to talk about, and we're going to go through this lengthy deep dive that EA has put out on Dynasty Mode and all the improvements for this year. I really enjoyed playing College Football 25 and the dynasties that I've done, but it was a pretty shallow mode with some missing features that we had back in NCAA 14. I really wanted to see some added depth and some key changes for this year, so let's take a look at what they're up to. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more Dynasty content on College Football 26, and let's dive in. Here we get a look at the new main screen in Dynasty that will include your coach, and in this case, it's Marcus Freeman with Notre Dame because College Football 26 will be including 300 plus authentic coaches with authentic playbooks, schemes, play calling tendencies, historical career stats, and archetypes. So that'll be nice to have the real coaches in the game this year. But I'm sure many of us are going to go the custom coach route and start from a level 1 and build up. In the trailer, they did say that the level cap this year has been increased to level 100. Here we have some new gear options, so nice to have a little more variety here and how your coach is going to look on the sideline. We're going to have coach demeanor and stance customization in the game. Is your coach cool, calm, and collected, or are they high energy? You're going to be able to give your coach some more personality in this game. I do think that's going to be nice, as I think just having more animation on the sideline, if that's what you're looking for out of your coach's personality. You know, they show the coaches a lot, so I think that it's good that they're going deeper on the customization here. Also interested about what all goes into the adaptive AI part of this, which will obviously matter more for CPU-controlled coaches. They're still trying to emphasize the idea that no coach is going to be great at everything. You're not just going to max everything out on your coach. So your staff, your two coordinators are going to still matter. Coach level is going to increase from a max of 50 to 100. With that, they've rebalanced the amount of XP that each goal is going to get you. They've also introduced a new level progression curve designed to provide early momentum, so you're probably going to get those first handful of levels pretty quickly. Once you're more established, we'll see about what level that ends up being. It'll be a lot slower to go from one to the next. With the three base archetypes, Recruiter, Motivator, and Tactician, Tactician offers the highest XP ceiling, but only if you're consistently winning. It also creates the greatest downside if you're not. And that makes sense, because the Tactician, you know, their entire thing is X's and O's and winning games regardless of who is out there. So I think that's a really good call. Motivator and Recruiter will have a more consistent gain, but lower ceiling. So there's a little trade-off. The amount of XP from each archetype perk now scales by archetype tier. The elite ones will offer double the XP as the base archetypes. Hybrid archetypes, talent developer, strategist, and architect offer more than elite. And program builder and CEO can offer upwards of 10 times more XP than a base tier archetype. So on this screenshot, then, we have an example that with Kirby Smart, the CEO, he has the big game bonus, which means he gets 12,500 XP for playoff wins. We also see in this screenshot that Kirby Smart is a level 80, so I think that the ceiling has a chance to be pretty good on the coaches if someone at the level of Kirby Smart is 80 out of 100. Then with your coordinators, their active perks are going to contribute to your XP growth at the same time. So you're going to want to make sure you're finding coordinators who are going to feed into that XP and the fit with your team as much as possible. They've updated several archetype perks. For example, with Talent Developer, we have the Draft Dividends perk, which awards 3,000 XP whenever your players are drafted. The big game bonus that I just talked about, that one now is for college football playoff wins and not just the national championship. Getting into the coach archetypes more now, we still have the three bases, Recruiter, Motivator, and Tactician. but now you have to get to a minimum coach level to unlock them. So it seems that initial choice you end up making is really going to shape how that coach's career unfolds. They've introduced scaling archetype costs. Each archetype you unlock becomes incrementally more expensive, encouraging more intentional choices as your journey evolves. Archetypes related to your current specialization will cost significantly less than if you're trying to adapt to a new skill set. So if you start off as a recruiter, as many of us will, elite recruiter is going to be cheaper than if you had gone a different route. I like this change overall. I started off as a recruiter in my Buffalo Dynasty, but it didn't seem too difficult to really dive into the tactician tree and then max that one out after a while. I think it's good to give people more reasons to not just go recruiter, because that seems like the default for so many. Program builder and CEO archetypes are the exceptions, as broader leadership-focused archetypes, rather than specific coaching disciplines, they're not impacted by scaling costs and are more accessible once you unlock them. And those are more long-term goals anyway. I think that does make sense. It's always easier to learn a new skill set when you're working alongside someone who already mastered it. That idea is reflected in the friends and family discount ability within the program builder archetype, which reduces the cost of unlocking archetypes owned by another coach. Another way of making that coordinator choice matter. And then they've rebalanced the abilities within those archetypes, looking for more rock, paper, scissors relationships there. They've adjusted the cost of the abilities and added some new ones. So here we have an example talent developer with defensive line. So tier 1, pay it forward. Bonus XP for when defensive linemen are drafted. Tier 2 is freshman and sophomore linemen progress faster. Tier 3, starting defensive linemen gain XP faster. And finally, Tier 4 is boost a pipeline bonus for the defensive linemen. Moving on now to the coaching carousel. You'll get notifications now when your coordinators accept or decline job offers. That's good because it was easy to get caught off guard if you sim passed a stage too quickly and didn't notice that one of your coordinators had actually left. Madden has the same issue. With coordinators playing such a pivotal role, they've added 3 new program builder abilities. Forever Home. Your coordinators are less likely to leave for another job. Deal Sweetener. Coordinators are more likely to accept your job offer. And Cream of the Crop increases the caliber of coordinators available for you to hire. They've also rebalanced the offer logic so that coaches at top-tier programs now receive better and more consistent opportunities. And then on the staff moves page, we're going to be able to see the coach's previous role at their previous school and what's changed now in the new cycle. All right, here's one that will definitely resonate with me. I love this kind of stuff. The trophy room is here in College Football 26. This is at the main menu, not just inside of Dynasty. So trophies are going to be there from Dynasty Mode, Road to Glory, and Road to the College Football Playoff. Rivalry trophies are in there. We're going to be able to see when you earned it, with what team, the score of that game. Here we have some coaching trophies that are also there. Each dynasty you create has its own dedicated trophy room tied to your coach. So we are going to have kind of a version it looks like inside of Dynasty and then your overall profile trophy room. These are the kinds of things that might not be the most important features, but when they're missing from a game like last year, you definitely feel it. Once you've spent some time with the game, it's the depth that you really notice, whether it's there or whether it's missing. The overall loop of going through seasons and seeing your team change is always there and fun, but it's these little things that I think pad out the ability to get more out of a long-term experience. Let's get into some of the core stuff now in Dynasty. The transfer portal. Some schools see a mass exodus, others stay almost completely untouched. This year with the transfer portal, you can expect to see a consistent pool of around 2,000 players entering the portal. If there are around 130 teams in the game, That would make for about an average of 15 players a team. I remember seeing some schools lose like 15 players in an off season, and that was, my idea of a mass exodus. So what are we about to see if, a program has a down year, head coach gets fired? I want to see what that looks like, but we definitely needed some transfer portal updates this year. As part of the rebalance, we have also changed how we assign star ratings to transfer prospects. It used to be based on their overall. Now it's going to be more influenced by their position and class year. So an 85 overall freshman quarterback is going to be scored higher than an 85 overall senior guard. So if more players are going to have the chance to use the portal, then you're going to have to be focused more on retaining your own roster and managing player expectations and needs. They emphasize it here. Players want more playing time, exposure, and sometimes what they want can change over time. In College Football 26, every player now has a deal breaker. And I think that alone can make it much easier to have these massive transfer portal pools. Additionally, conference prestige has been added as a deal breaker. And they've refined how playing time deal breaker works. This was definitely a tough one in my Buffalo Dynasty for sure. So last year, with the playing time deal breaker, players were looking at their projected depth chart position over the next 4 years, which in some cases, in my experience, worked well with a more crowded position group. But what it was focused too much on was overall rating, and it was missing the part where sometimes a lower rated player actually gets significant playing time. So now the playing time deal breaker is going to factor in snaps played. So if they're getting on the field, it's not going to be like it was last year. This is actually something I've specifically wanted. Even if playing time isn't an official deal breaker, it can still be a deciding factor in whether or not they stay. And I'm really hoping that kind of scales the further they are into their career. Because I believe, sure, maybe as a freshman, you care a lot about, what type of coach you're playing for. But by the time you're a senior, you might just need to get playing time because your career is about over. And if you're on the cusp of being a draft pick, you should want to see the field. They talk here about redshirting players when, maybe they are starting caliber, but just constantly redshirting players to have that long-term upside chance. That's going to be a risky call now. If you're limiting playing time, you might have a greater chance of losing those players. So here's an example screenshot we have of Alabama. Great team, obviously, coming off a 9-win season here in this case. Maybe not great by Alabama standards, but even with a 9-4 season, that's probably not knocking down their tier significantly. A lot of players here are transferring out, really good players, and the chance to bring them back is looking very low. So in CFB 25, those deal breakers were shown on player cards needing a grade of B- to be satisfied, and that threshold was solid. It never changed. Now there are dynamic deal breakers, a system that actively reflects a player's evolving and changing expectations. As players become more talented and productive, expectations grow. This makes it more difficult for some schools to meet those rising demands. A school that once felt like a great fit might not fit anymore. The required grade now scales based on a player's overall rating. High school star rating or transfer portal star rating. The better the player, the higher the expectations. Here we get a screenshot. We have Oregon receiver Decorian Moore, whose deal breaker is playing time, and he needs a B+. So I think those are nice changes. You don't want to be able to just stash talent on your roster without any risk of losing them, whether it's to the draft early or transfer portal. I want them and the game to be balanced in a way to where when you have great players, you're just not even thinking about it. You're playing them. I've kind of been doing that in my own dynasty with players I have high expectations for. I'm not even redshirting them anymore because I don't consider them to be 4-year players anymore. Early declares in CFB 25 pushed us more in that direction, and hopefully the improved transfer portal logic really makes it so you're only redshirting players who need development. So in this first screenshot, Decorian Moore is an 85, and his deal breaker need is a B+. On the next screenshot, he's a 91. Now that need is an A-, and deal breaker for him in this case is playing time. So it's going to be interesting to go through and see, like, when playing time isn't the core deal breaker, how is that still applied? Because to me, playing time should be the most critical factor in these decisions. But if we are going to see thousands of players in the portal every year, playing time probably needs to be the greatest catalyst to get there. How you build your coach and staff can impact your ability to manage evolving player expectations. You can purchase the Lower the Bar ability in Strategist, which drops the grade threshold required to meet a player's deal breaker up to a full letter grade at times. So there. That's a great, reason. Why would you pick something other than Recruiter? You can also purchase the Family Atmosphere ability within the Master Motivator archetype, which makes players less likely to transfer if their deal breaker has been broken. So that's kind of the two different ways to attack that issue. If players do decide to leave within the Program Builder archetype, you're going to have the Gift of Gab ability with additional persuasion attempts at getting them to come back. Roster Retainer, increased chance of persuading a player to stay, which could possibly become one of the more coveted abilities within the game. Full Refund, get an additional persuasion attempt if one of your attempts is successful. On another player, I'm guessing then. If they want to make this a true rock, paper, scissors type of system, then we should be seeing those who go all in on recruiting maybe have a tougher time keeping the roster together. So we're going to get some transfer portal customization now. So what kind of experience do you want? Do you want the wild modern era portal or do you want something more simple? Settings include maximum transfers per team. For me, unless this feature's broken, I probably won't use that. Transfer probability. Scale how likely players on user-controlled teams are to transfer if their deal breaker is violated. And transfer probability on the CPU teams. So I'm really happy. I'm always in favor of more sliders, especially because I tend to want a little more hardcore experience than many. And I know not everybody wants to play the game the way I do, but sliders can help everybody get the experience they're looking for. Now we're getting into school identity and the 14 core categories of which you're graded. They've rebalanced the grade curve across these, so now fewer teams are going to have A or B grades, and most are going to fall somewhere between D and C-, or is this D and C, I think, creating more visible separation. One of the biggest changes comes in pro potential. Previously, it estimated a program's ability to produce NFL talent based on the current roster. Now it's going to be based on historical draft results over the past 4 seasons, tracked by position. This being tracked by position, I think, is really good and helps, give your school a bit of a reputation for sending certain positions pro. And it provides more of a challenge then if you've never sent like a member of your secondary to the pros, that you're not going to get graded well there just because maybe a few offensive linemen were drafted. They've made improvements to playing style, the stat-driven grade, tied to how your team performs. Every archetype, including the new ones in College Football 26, and there seem to be a lot of new archetypes, they have its own playing style tracking reevaluated. Last year, many defensive player types were overly reliant on stats like interceptions or TFLs, leading to small sample skew. This year, especially on defense, team-level stats like average passing yards allowed or rushing yards allowed per game. So I think that will be an improvement. I saw some weird situations last year. I'd like to see maybe multiple conditions on some of them. I lost a star quarterback one year because his passing yardage was relatively low, but we won playoff games and we threw for over 30 touchdowns that season, but the yards just weren't there because we ran the ball to get yards. All right, this one was in the trailer. I liked this a lot. Location-based recruiting. So when you are doing visits now with players, the cost of that visit isn't just going to be the flat 40 points anymore. It's going to be tied to the distance that player is to your school. Costs can range from as low as 10 recruiting hours for nearby players to as high as 40 hours for cross-country visits. So if we're looking at about the same point scaling and everything, we could fit 40 points in no problem in the last game. That might not be much of an issue, but it's more so an advantage than to recruiting closer to home. I'd actually like to have seen them increase the cost of 40 to up to 60 or 80 if it really is like a cross-country trip. Like, imagine you're like me playing a Dynasty in Buffalo and you're bringing in somebody from like California. I think that should be maybe a much more expensive option. To help maximize your visits, the CEO archetype includes a new ability, More the Merrier. This doubles the number of players who can visit your campus in a single week, which I think is really nice. This goes from 4 to 8. Oftentimes on my schedule, there were like 1 or 2 games that really stood out for visits because the better players make their decisions early. And if they're already scheduled to go to another school, I might only have 1 or 2 weeks to really stuff visits in, and sometimes 4 wasn't enough. If you're running a staff with a coordinator whose active archetype is strategist, the benefits can stack even further. This grants bonus XP for every recruit who visits during a win. So if you have 8 there for a win, you can get a nice coach XP boost. I like what I'm hearing in terms of the new abilities and just the variety of ways to customize your coach. It does sound very good to me. Getting more into the recruiting side of things now. They have reordered how attributes are displayed during scouting. So shared ratings are in a more consistent order. The organization there, definitely needed to be boosted. And when you're comparing players at the same position, regardless of archetype, those attributes will line up the same way every time, so you can go through your position groups a little bit quicker. They've expanded the power of the Mind Reader ability within Strategist, and previously it revealed a recruit's dev trait during a campus visit. I don't think I ever actually had that one. But now if you have Mind Reader, you're going to reveal a dev trait directly through scouting, and that's a huge one. The earlier you know that, the sooner you know which players are worth the big investment on. So they're doing a good job with some of these here. I like that. Here we have a quarterback, Walter Etienne. We have the awareness here in the top left, throw power, all the accuracies here, and then the more secondary ratings with speed and acceleration, and dev trait here as well. And this dev trait is revealed before this player has even gotten into his top 8, so that seems like a pretty valuable skill. All right, next up, recruiting battles. In CFB 25, there were moments where 2 schools were locked into a close recruiting race, and it wasn't clear why one team won. That definitely felt awkward when you did have those close races in Dynasty. So now when one school reaches the commitment threshold and another is right behind them, a recruiting battle will be triggered. The recruit won't commit right away, and instead they'll set a new higher commitment threshold, giving both schools a short window to make one final push. It's not a long extension. I don't know if that really solves the problem as much. I don't mind kind of creating more of a secondary runway there, but I still don't know if this is going to solve the problem of it feeling like it's a random outcome or not really understanding what gave one team the edge. You can still have a neck-and-neck race if you move the finish line 100 yards further away, so I don't know about this one. This year, we've increased the number of recruits generated each season to 4,100. They've rebalanced several key aspects, including physical and mental abilities, as well as prospects' individual ratings. You'll still find players with high-level attributes and silver or gold tier abilities, but there will be fewer of them overall. And when it comes to athletes, we've reduced the quality of top-end athlete prospects and the quantity generated across each position. I did feel like just targeting as many athletes as possible was usually a winning strategy, especially when the game first dropped last year. Remember, they didn't have really any limits on speed at quarterback, so 90 plus was extremely common. I had to house rule that one for a little bit. We've also reworked how pitches and deal breakers are assigned to reflect the wants and needs of players today. Glamour positions like QB, running back, receiver, corner, and edge rusher put a heavier emphasis on brand exposure. We'll see if that makes it tougher on smaller schools recruiting those players. Additionally, we've rebalanced the motivations and assignment of deal breakers across pitches to create more overlap. The goal is to make it harder to immediately pinpoint a recruit's ideal pitch based solely on their deal breaker. After a while, it became pretty easy to just see the deal breaker, see which ones the prospect has already eliminated as his ideal pitch, and figure it out, just process of elimination your way to the answer. I've wanted it to be a little more difficult. They've also reduced the weights that most prospects will start at to reflect players' still growing over the course of their college careers. And with that, they've brought in a new lean body type, which is more noticeable at the receiver position. Sway is one of the most powerful tools, but it's also the most misunderstood. I don't even think I understand it now. I barely used it. We've made several improvements to make this feature clearer, more actionable, and easier to take advantage of when your school doesn't fully align with the recruit's motivations. It's designed for those moments when your school grades don't match up with the prospect's ideal pitch, or when you want to expand what a recruit cares about to include a pitch that plays to your strengths. A successful sway allows you to add a second ideal pitch, giving you more flexibility. In some cases, it can even unlock a third ideal pitch. This year, you'll now see the probability of success before making your move. Your chance of success increases based on how much motivational overlap exists between the pitch you're trying to sway a recruit toward and their existing ideal pitch. And with this series of screenshots, it's shown here in the lower right-hand corner. And on this page, we see the three ideal motivations here for this player. And if you're, wanting that playing style to be important, but you want the coach stability and the proximity to home, you're trying to sway to that archetype, only going to have maybe a lower chance of getting that to work out. And like many of these features, it's tied to another perk in the coaching skill tree. So the persuasive personality ability inside of Recruiter will give you an edge in these situations. All right, for recruiting quality of life now. When it comes to your positional depth, you'll now be able to see that at the top of the screen. So you won't have to pull up that team needs menu to see what you should be targeting. Now on the recruiting board, you'll see up and down arrows that will indicate whether you're moving up or down on that player's top schools list compared to the previous week. And once a player enters their top 5 stage and you can now pitch them more specifically, a red dot will appear during the first week so you know those actions are now available. Now you can also favorite recruits by double tapping triangle or Y, and this basically bookmarks those players. And there is a sorting filter now where you can just look at your favorite recruits. And they've added some search parameters now with maximum star rating, minimum pipeline level, and recruiting stage. Continuing on now, we get to player progression. At times in CFB 25, players would go long stretches without any progression, only to suddenly take a big leap when they've leveled up a skill group. So now they're going to increase the number of skill group levels from 10 to 20, so it's more gradual. Dev trait now plays a greater role in off-season progression. There's still variability in how much they can develop. Star and elite development traits now have a higher minimum amount they will progress. Talking about freshmen here and how they can change a lot from their first year to the next, we can see physical changes to their body. Players will now gain weight during off-season progression. The amount they gain is influenced by position and year in school. And last, your school's athletic facilities now increases the amount of progression your players receive. The higher your grade is, the greater your progression boost will be. So, athletic facilities definitely going to be much more important then, which is often one of the worst things about taking on some of these one-star programs. We've talked a little bit about new abilities in the game with the gameplay deep dive, but on top of those, there have been modifications to the requirements of unlocking physical ability tiers. Previously, they required a single attribute level to unlock each tier. For example, 95 toughness to unlock Platinum Workhorse. Now, some abilities like Shifty require 2 attribute ratings to upgrade them. So Platinum Shifty requires 97 change of direction and 96 acceleration. This makes the top tier abilities rarer. They've also introduced new archetypes, and I'm excited to have more variety there at each position. Player performance during the season now plays a huge role in their long-term potential. If a player has a great year, they can upgrade their development trait during off-season progression. Performance is determined by their season stat line relative to their position. It's not guaranteed, and the better a player's current trait is, the harder it is to move up. You can increase the odds of players upgrading their dev traits with the Gains Getter ability within CEO Archetype. If a player does upgrade their dev trait, you'll get a notification. That's good because there are like 90 players on a roster, so having this information shown to you is nice. The training results screen has also been overhauled, so now we have more of an indicator of how much better each rating got, which was a key feature in NCAA 14's training screen. It wasn't there last year, so you'd have to kind of remember in some cases, which I always found very difficult. We can see on this screenshot, we have overalls going up by 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. We also can see over here if a player gained weight during the offseason. Manual progression is going to be an option in this game, so if you don't want to have that automatic upgrade system that was introduced last year, you can now enable manual progression. You'll still earn skill points, but they're not automatically applied. You can spend these on ratings or physical abilities. Manual progression can offer a significant advantage in player growth, so when it's turned on, it comes with a default 25% progression nerf. The nerf is fully customizable in Dynasty Mode. It can be turned off or increased to 100%. I don't think I'll use this feature because honestly, I don't want to tinker with 90 players' skill points, and I kind of like the hands-off approach to it. But I think it's good that it's in the game. On we go to position changes. Now when you change a player's position, they're only going to retain the abilities that are shared between their previous archetype and a new one. The skill group caps are also adjusted based on how closely the new position relates to their original one. So running back to receiver will have a smaller drop in development rather than moving that player to something much different. And here's something I'm really interested in seeing how it works in this year's game. Let's get to wear and tear. Every player now has season and career health pools that determine how much wear and tear damage they can recover in a single season over the course of their career. Every time a player recovers wear and tear damage, it draws from these pools. Once the season pool is depleted, the player can no longer recover wear and tear damage until the off-season when they will fully recover. I'm really excited to see, hopefully, much more wear and tear effects over the course of the season with ratings affected from one game to the next. I don't think playing 25 I ever saw a player was like in tough shape going into a game but could play through an injury. I never had that situation where I actually sat a guy to recover unless I couldn't play him, which injuries in this game haven't really been a big factor, and they weren't in 14 either for whatever reason. So that season health pool then is going to change from year to year. For instance, if you basically spend an entire player's season recovery pool one year, then their season pool the next season will be significantly smaller. You'll see the impacts of a player's season health on their career health bar over the course of the season. In effect, you are going to have to manage a player's career clock. How heavily a player is used from year to year will impact their longevity. I'm excited about that. This year, we have also updated the player module to include a wear and tear sub-panel, which can allow you to quickly view a player's wear and tear health at a glance. I think that the next step is to have just a wear and tear menu where you can cover everybody in a more quick fashion. Now, for this stuff to work well, the auto subs and everything are going to have to really work, and auto subs have really, I don't think, performed very well in any EA game since NCAA 14, where I did find auto subs that worked for me. But you can't just count on manually controlling everybody's playing time unless you want to pause or switch things up manually all the time, which I do sometimes. But auto subs are going to be a necessity with these systems. I'm excited about having auto sub sliders for each position, and they really need to work, and we need feedback on being able to see like where a player's fatigue is and better understand how close they are to coming out of the game or coming back in. So you're going to have sub strategies then. Keep fresh, prioritize rotating players out early. Normal is a more balanced approach. Grind it out. You're not going to be subbing players as often. You'll risk wear and tear effects, or custom. And I'm excited to see what this is all like and if this really does give me the experience that I've been searching for. This is coming over from the gameplay deep dive, but we're going to have control not just over those wear and tear auto sub sliders, but also how much wear and tear is applied based on each type of tackle and outcome. And that also includes per play recovery, per timeout recovery. So this is going to be really customizable and hopefully not too difficult to tweak and get what you're looking for. We got a couple new teams this year, guys. In the game, we're going to have Missouri State and Delaware. 136 teams in Dynasty. In College Football 26, we're introducing College Football History, which is accessible from the Stats and Records tab of the Dynasty Hub. This is the hub for the legacy of the sport and your dynasty, from Yale winning the first national championship to every moment you create across your 30-year dynasty. So in this history section, it's going to have the historic national champions, conference champions dating back to 1896. For each national and conference champion, you'll see the year they won it, their top 25 ranking, season record, name of the coach. If this was a championship game, you'll also be able to see the losing team, their rank, record, and score. 21 individual player and coach award winners. You're also able to filter by team and conference. This allows you to see every Heisman winner from Alabama, every SEC team that's reached the national championship game. They've added 14 authentic awards into this game, including the Maxwell Award and the Walter Camp Award. And they've rebalanced defensive stats with tackles, TFLs, and sacks and how that's weighted in the award logic. This is all stuff that I'm a huge fan of, especially the deeper you go into Dynasty, the more you're going to get out of features like this as you look back on the previous seasons. Along with this, you're now going to be able to see all the awards and accolades a player has earned on their player card. So all the Player of the Week awards and everything are going to be in there. I really wish that was in for my Buffalo Dynasty last year. I think the next evolution of this, I would love to see some sort of career dynasty stats kept where I can see like stats that are only from my dynasty and be able to look at my team and like all the quarterbacks I had over the 8 years I played Buffalo, all the running back stats sorted. I would love to have something like that, even if they cut off like players who didn't meet a certain threshold. Just to be able to see all those dynasty career leaders would be incredible for me. They do say here in this section that they've added some stats as well, so I will be on the lookout for that. In CFB 25, it could be difficult to understand how conference tiebreakers were resolved. This year, they made it a priority to bring clarity and transparency, so now you know what caused the tiebreaker. First, they look at head-to-head record between teams. If the teams didn't play each other or the head-to-head doesn't resolve the tie, they check record against common conference opponents. If they're still tied, they use the CFP ranking to determine placement. Now, the first thing I think of here with this logic is that in 25, it seemed that conference tiebreaker, when it was too many teams, just became alphabetical order. We saw some tiebreakers that shouldn't have happened in my dynasty. In addition to the tiebreaker logic, they've added columns showing point differential. That's a cool stat to include there. Average margin of victory as well. They've added some deeper stat tracking for both individual players and teams. The box score now displays the total number of plays and yards per play, and new metrics within season stats, career stats, and team stats. So for quarterbacks, touchdown percentage, sack rate, interception percentage, touchdown to interception ratio, net yards per pass attempt, adjusted net yards per pass attempt. These are stats commonly referenced by fans, reporters, everybody. So I really like seeing these added to the game. Defensive ends are now edge rushers. We saw this in the Madden Deep Dive. Thankfully, it is here. Linebackers are now labeled Sam, Will, or Mike. Mike replacing middle linebacker. This is a long time coming. We're also going to have long snapper, the gadget player option now on the depth chart, nose tackle. They've expanded now to 59 total archetypes, each with its own combination of physical abilities. Wide receiver now has 7 unique archetypes, for instance. Speedster, pure burner who takes the top off the defense. Route artist, precise, smooth, and always open. Physical route runner for more big slot types where they have good route running but not as fast. Elusive route runner, shifty before and after the catch. Gritty possession, tough, reliable, and physical. Gadget receiver is a do-it-all player who may take snaps at quarterback or running back. And contested specialist dominates tight coverage. I'm guessing also pretty slow and dangerous to draft into the NFL. Next, we get into formation subs, which were in the previous game. You can set up to 50 formation subs per team, and they'll persist season to season unless a player who was involved in a sub changes or leaves the team. If you switch playbooks, any formations shared between the old and new will retain their assigned subs. Now, what I don't see here is there full coverage for custom playbooks, because this has basically caused me to abandon formation subs because I almost always use a custom playbook, which work perfectly in NCAA 14. I love formation subs, but until they cover everything you can do with custom playbooks, it's not going to meet my expectations. With custom conferences, now we have protected opponents again. Most conference configurations can support 1 or 2 protected opponents per team, depending on number of teams in the conference. Yeah, this one hurt to not have in 25, so definitely needed it back immediately. For scheduling updates, they have every real scheduled matchup up to 2040 in the game. With the college football playoff, the format has been changed a little bit now so that the top 4 seeds are the top 4 teams in the CFP rankings, not just the 4 highest ranked conference champions. For quality of life, anytime a player appears in a spreadsheet, you can now press triangle or Y to open their player card. Now, anywhere a player appears in a spreadsheet, you'll be able to see their season stats on the player module. I think this is actually even better, just having the stats right there as you look at, the Heisman standings, for instance. We can also now see a player's dev trait in the abilities sub-panel. Quick access to team schedules within the conference standings, top 25 polls. You can now press Y or triangle to view the full schedule. Now in Dynasty Hub, there is a new tab called Members, which allows you to see every user in your online dynasty or every coach character in your offline dynasty. It shows username, team, top 25 rank, current week matchup, and result. College Football 26 Online Dynasty is now cross-play across Xbox Series X and S and the PlayStation 5. You can run a 32-person online dynasty regardless of platform then. We now have dynamic time of day in the game. They talked about this with the presentation deep dive. I didn't have time to cover that one yesterday. It didn't have a trailer with it. It was just an article. But now lighting is going to change based on the time of day. A game can start where it's still light, then the sun sets throughout the game. That'll be very cool. Add a little bit to the atmosphere. And I notice it when I play a game like MLB The Show, which has this feature. Super Sim tempo adjustments. Teams who run up-tempo style of play will now have an increased number of snaps during their games. Broken records feedback. When a player on your team breaks a single game, season, or career record, you'll now get a full screen takeover celebrating the achievement. And we have a few other smaller things here as well, including being able to simulate to any week in the season specifically. Red shirt updates. Players can now play in postseason games without them counting against their red shirt eligibility. Also, when you redshirt a player, it's not going to reset the entire depth chart, only the position that player plays. If you'd like to know more about an ability is when scouting a player, you can highlight the ability and it'll display a tooltip telling you what it does. They are now removing the beta tag off of Team Builder. It now has a completely new look. The site, they say, is twice as fast. You can also import teams from College Football 25. That's very good. Sticking with Team Builder, in Dynasty, all teams have a set of My School grades that define who they are as a program. Once you pick a template, you'll see your projected team prestige and My School grades. Some of those will show up as exact values, while others appear as ranges. So, for example, your stadium atmosphere grade will adjust based on the size of the stadium you select. Championship contender depends on which team you replace in Dynasty Mode, since you'll inherit their preseason ranking. Other attributes like coach stability, prestige, conference prestige won't come from your template at all. Instead, they'll reflect your coach setup. Roster editing now lives in its own dedicated tab. In 26, you'll be able to see your team's overall offensive and defensive ratings at all times, and they'll update as you make changes. When viewing an individual player, you'll be able to see their overall rating. When editing a player, there are two editing tabs, bio and skill ratings and abilities. So you can update their information, their appearance. This is kind of what I was waiting for before I mess with Team Builder again. That's why I didn't really touch it last year. The site didn't work great for me, and it was missing stuff I wanted. There are some nice shortcuts here as well in the editing. You can set up a player to have a low, medium, or high potential, which sets the player's skill group caps based on your option there. You can set abilities as well, what tier they are. They've added 3 generic stadiums and a high school stadium as well. All generic stadiums are small to medium-sized with no branding. And you have control as well over which pipeline your Team Builder team starts with. And you can now create up to 5 rivalries for your Team Builder team. You can even fill out historical information with those rivalries. And with that, everybody, we have reached the end. That was a lot to talk about today, and there's a lot I'm looking forward to with Dynasty in 26. With the transfer portal logic, the wear and tear, there are, a lot of things that I think can make this experience better, and I really enjoyed my time in 25, but at the same time knew that Dynasty Mode itself was very simple. I just really enjoy playing franchise and Dynasty, and the loop always gets me, but to have some new things to look forward to that really, speak to me, I'm excited to see what's possible here in this year's game. I'd like to know down below what your takeaways are and what your favorite update or change is for this year's game. I think that there's a lot of good here that'll add some depth. But at the same time, we have to see how well some of these things are implemented. Like, wear and tear is not just a light switch you turn on and off, and if it's on, then everything is good. Like, it has to still be tuned and balanced, and the sliders have to make sense. So we have to see how it all is in practice. But it isn't going to be too long before we're playing the game, everybody. A couple weeks from now, we'll see how good all this stuff really is. And I'll be here, of course, doing as much as I can in the new game. With that, everybody, thank you for watching the video. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I will catch you all in the next video.